Canadians are still on the hook for millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses, even with uptake at an all-time low, thanks to the secretive contracts signed by then Procurement Minister Anita Anand. Remember when the COVID-19 vaccines were authorized on a rolling basis through an interim order that eventually just became a permanent piece of Health Canada's approval process so that they could continue to be administered when there was clearly a lack of emergency justifying their use? Well, I'm Tamara Ugolini here with Rebel News to show you an access to information document that we were able to obtain through your generosity and support at rebelinvestigates.com. That's our exclusive government accountability website, so please check it out if you haven't already. The document came as Blacklock's reported almost $2 billion of taxpayer money thrown in the trash thanks to vaccine wastage for expired COVID-19 shots. A number that only climbs when one also considers the number of shots that were given to charities abroad through the global vaccine sharing company called COVAX. Here we have the manufacturing and supply agreement between Pfizer Canada and then at the time Her Majesty the Queen, represented and signed by the Minister of Public Works and Government Services Canada, dated October 26th, 2020. That's a mere 7 months after various provinces and territories across Canada first declared states of emergency in March of 2020. The purchase order originally detailed a legally binding and irrevocable contract order for 20 million doses of the product. It was acknowledged that additional binding orders would be placed in the future to a maximum of 56 million additional doses. The purchase price per dose is redacted on page 15 of the document, but we know from the Auditor General Karen Hogan's 2022 report that in May of that year, the average cost of one dose was approximately $30, excluding taxes. While all of the additional financial stipulations are redacted on page 15, you can see that invoices were sent to the Public Health Agency of Canada, overseen by Theresa Tam. Pfizer clearly states on page 18 that the purchaser must acknowledge that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known, and that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. Why then did our government and state-backed media repeatedly claim that the shots were safe and effective? Pfizer details on page 19 that they are responsible for all checks and balances, from manufacturing trials, validation, tests or checks to assure the quality of the product, and tests or checks required by the specifications and the CGMP, which is Canada's Good Manufacturing Process Regulations. It states that the purchaser may reject any products that do not conform to specifications, those Canadian GMPs, with written notice. Given that Pfizer is accused of hiding a residual DNA plasmid known as the SV40 promoter, which is a circular DNA molecule that replicates independently, as explained by genomics expert Kevin McKernan to Rebel News last year, I wanted to reach out to those responsible for the continued authorization of these novel products with questions about specifications and the GMP regulations. In an email to Federal Minister of Health, Mark Holland, Chief Medical Officer of Health for the Public Health Agency of Canada, Theresa Tam, and the General Media Inquiry Line at Health Canada, I asked the following. Why is Health Canada continuing with authorization of the COVID-19 injections despite continued concerns over undisclosed contaminants, including large amounts of residual DNA? How does the evolving science behind the modified RNA shots contend with the non-complying product specifications detailed in the manufacturing and supply contract agreement? Has Health Canada considered rejecting COVID-19 vaccines within contractual stipulations due to the above? Why or why not? Now, none of the parties outlined above responded to this request, and it's next to impossible to know the answers given the immense redactions seen throughout these documents, which, by the way, aren't done in the usual way. They appear to be white instead of blackened or grayed out, which makes it really difficult to decipher if there are in fact redactions in many areas, especially as you get towards the bottom of the pages. For instance, recall information on page 19 is redacted, as is warranty information on page 20, and the mutual termination rights on page 22. The reasoning behind this was explained by Liberal MP Anthony Housefather in the House of Commons last year. Have a look at this clip.
Why is there much more redactions, as my colleague said, in these documents than in other documents? It's because these documents were signed at the beginning of a pandemic, when everybody was desperate for vaccines, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production, do testing in an unprecedented way, in a way they normally don't do it. So these companies were exposed to way higher liability, putting their products on the market than they normally would, because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market. They did it all in less than a year. So that's why these companies said, if I'm going to deliver you this product that I haven't tested in my normal way, I want to have different conditions.
That's right. The government waived liability for this rushed to market product, and only a select number of roughly 35 government officials were sworn to secrecy through non-disclosure agreements and allowed to view the details of the government's COVID-19 vaccine contracts. Some of these were time limited, but many of them were indefinite. These contracts were signed by then Minister of Public Services and Procurement, Anita Anand, whose husband was awarded hundreds of millions of dollars in federal COVID-19 contracts. Anand's husband, John Knowlton, is the Senior Managing Director and Business Manager at OMERS Infrastructure, that's Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System, and the Executive Vice President of its subsidiary, Borealis Infrastructure. He's also on the board of directors for Life Labs Terranet Inc., listing his top interest voices on his LinkedIn as none other than Bill Gates and Justin Trudeau. Aloof Anand, who was then acting as Minister of Defense, recently stated that she was extremely surprised when it was discovered during the ArriveCAN scandal investigation that one of the government surveillance program's contractors, Dalian Enterprises CEO David Yeo, was also a Department of National Defense employee. Under amendments to the agreement on page 86 of the contract, there was a new section added for the pediatric COVID-19 vaccine in November of 2021. After a redaction on the amendment itself, the contract says on page 87 that the product was authorized for the prevention of COVID-19. Yet a vast amount of medical literature acknowledges that these shots do not, in fact, prevent COVID-19, and even the media had to start reporting on what was coined breakthrough infections by the summer of 2021. That doesn't seem accurate. Oddly, the contract agreement then detailed and replaced the following definition of a vaccine, but that too is redacted. In an updated 2022 contract on page 97, they are still expediting authorization. The pediatric vaccine definition is still redacted on page 98, as is the general vaccine definition found on page 100. The latest dose numbers show that Canada, a country with a population of roughly 39 million, received 51 million Pfizer doses from the fourth quarter of 2020 until the end of 2022. Over 4 million pediatric doses for ages 5 to 12 in 2021, and almost 34 million doses in 2022, with an additional 3 million option doses obtained for a grand total of 38,550,000 that year for all formulations spanning the 6-month and up age groups. 2023 saw another almost 30 million doses, and 2024 is nowhere to be found. However, going back to page 60 of the original contracts, one of them signed in April of 2021, there were supposed to be 60 million doses slated for this year, 2024. For some reason, on all of the other delivery schedules from the other parts of the document, 2024 stipulations are non-existent. If you take the tallies from the government website on procurement of the various COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers' doses, which was last updated in April of 2023, there are nearly 600 million total doses secured from initial agreement doses, including future supply speculations. For a country, again, with a population of less than 39 million residents. Of course, vaccine wastage is going to be in the billions, as reported by Blacklock's, as only 16% of the population has opted to receive the new booster formulation, with the vast majority hopping off of the seasonal booster bandwagon a long time ago. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. You can call on Federal Health Minister Mark Cullen to revoke market authorization for these products at nomoreshots.ca. At that special website, you can sign our petition calling for the same and also send a form email to the minister directly asking him to revoke market authorization.